Hello, good evening, and welcome to Now Press Play's first ever webinar, Navigating Online Safety During a Pandemic. I'm Tilly, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Now Press Play, which is an immersive audio resource for primary school children. Over the last 8 years, I have had the pleasure of working with our guest speakers, and they are all individuals who have inspired me with their energy, passion for education, and how online safety is always at the forefront of what they do. So with us today, we have Katie Potts, who is Computing and Online Lead for Islington. Katie works with a large group of EdTech and education organisations. She organises termly leaders events, teach meets, community celebrations to maximise partnerships and good practices, with a shared vision of equipping young people with the digital skills to promote creativity, learning and career opportunities. And I should have pinned her for that, so I'm just going to give her a quick spotlight. That's Katie. Give everyone a wave.
Hello from Finchley Park.
and next up I'd like to introduce is David. So I'm just going to replace spotlight here. So David is Deputy Head and Year 5 teacher at Bishop Ian Ramsey Church of England Primary School in County Durham. He is also computing lead, a role which he had at his 2 previous schools. And he's particularly interested in using technology to engage children and how we can utilise the great tech resources we have to help push forward teaching and learning across schools. Next up is Dawn Halliburn. So Dawn is Chief Strategy Officer at Too Simple, and Dawn helps maximise the benefits of online technologies to advance approaches to both teaching and learning, whilst improving outcomes for learners of all ages. Dawn has over 20 years teaching experience working in junior schools across London in a range of roles, including 4 years as Deputy Head and time as an acting head. And lastly,
good evening, everyone.
And lastly, I would like to introduce Martin. Martin Bailey has been primary school teacher in the northeast of England for over 20 years. He currently works as digital enrichment leader at Lanchester EP Primary School in County Durham. He's also director of his own company, Animate to Educate, and is also a lecturer in primary computing at Durham University. So for those of you who are at home, make sure you join in the conversation on social media. For those of you that have registered, put any questions you have into the Q&A chat, and we will aim to answer as many as possible at the end. So over to our first question. And Katie, I'm going to come to you first. I'd like to ask you, how has the pandemic impacted your approach to online safety? What new technologies and philosophies have you had to take?
Well, I think if we'd all imagined last February what we've achieved in the last year in terms of the adoption of digital and technology in education and across the whole of society, you know, we just wouldn't have believed it. And there has been, I mean, you know, there have been positive things in terms of educational achievements and the role of technology during this pandemic. And I think many, not many, but significant parts of remote learning will stay in education. I mean, this is the findings from Ofsted last week. For me, what has been positive as well has been the way online safety has become at the forefront of leadership across the school and governance. So previously, it might have sat with, online safety may have sat with the computing leader. It's been supported by the safeguarding, and it was in keeping children safe in education and Annex C, but it's now really a part of the core school policy, and that is being now driven wholeheartedly by SLT. You know, because it's the tools like Zoom and the video conferencing platforms, you know, not just for live lessons, but also for reaching children for those critical activities like reading and health and wellbeing activities in small group and one-to-ones by teaching assistants. And at the core of that has to be the safeguarding. And we're seeing online harms paper in December the government brought through the responses to that paper, there was a concern that that would be delayed until 2022 or 23, but people were really pleased to see that almost be accelerated in December with the responses from government, which will be significant in the regulation and protection of children and young people on these platforms. I mean, it would be good to hear from the other schools around that question, Tilly, as well.
Yeah, of course. So if anyone has any questions relating to that, put them in there. Martin, would you like to add on anything to that?
Yeah, I think it's a confidence thing, and in the past, you know, we would have this thing as teachers where we'd almost want to be experts in something before would really sort of you know, delve into using them. But the last year has meant that we have had to think on our feet a little bit more. You know, as Katie rightly said, you know, Teams, Zoom, you know, 12 months ago, these were tools that most schools had never really, you know, sort of adopted and used sort of too much before. And, you know, as teachers, we would normally want to think, I need to know this inside out before I could possibly use this. And actually, it's maybe helped in a way that we have just had to go for it a little bit. And that's not saying that would be negligent towards safety, anything like that. But, you know, it's meant that something that maybe, oh, should we not, is actually, it's been that spur this year to actually, you know, finally use the type of technology in education that's maybe been used in other industries sort of for longer. And it's meant that it's probably been a little bit more joined up, the process between, you know, schools and homes. You know, would like to claim that sort of that's always been the case, that we listen to parents and stuff like that. But you know, sometimes it is just schools saying this is what's happening. We're actually, over the last 12 months, certainly from my own experience, you know, we've really listened to parents sort of throughout the process, and listened to, you know, what they would want from lessons and how the technology can help support them at home. So I think, you know, the big positive for me is the joining up of the process, and meaning that sort of, you know, CPD in that area has been like ever escalated. I said to a lot of people last year that it was almost like 6 years worth of CPD in 6 months, you know, sort of in terms of staff learning this technology that, you know, it would have taken an eternity in terms of, you know, staff meetings over a period of time to do that. But when you actually have the opportunity and the experience to use the technology, you learn very quickly. And, you know, I agree with Katie, there'll be some things that will remain. We can't wait to get back to face-to-face teaching. I was laughing today when I've seen a lot of people in the Northeast. We've had quite a lot of snow today, and, you know, saying, you know, snow days are a thing of the past because loads of schools posting going school closed, but, you know, teaching will continue online and that, you know. And in the past it would have been, oh yes, great, you know, snow day and that. And, you know, I'm sure for parents they'll you know, they'll appreciate sort of that, you know, learning can continue sort of, you know, when we do have these days. And, you know, that's where now we will just, you know, default and you know, be able to instantly sort of flip to sort of remote learning, remote teaching, because it, you know, it's something we're quite confident and familiar with.
Yeah, it's really nice, isn't it, to know that there is a silver lining to that, because parental engagement is always been high on the agenda, especially with online safety. So I wanted to come to you, David, and just ask on that point, in today's climate, how are you encouraging parental engagement with the online safety, and what the difference is for you, like challenges or wins that you may have had pre-COVID?
Yeah, evening everyone. Yeah, I think it's definitely a lot different, isn't it, to pre-COVID, where we can't have that sort of face-to-face engagement as much now with parents in the past year, where we'd be typically able to sort of invite them into school and for workshops and assemblies and the events at Christmas and leavers and all of that stuff that usually we'd have parents in for. That's this sort of been blocked, hasn't it, because of COVID. So I think, and this is again not a negative thing, but a positive thing to come from it, is that I think schools we've had to be probably a bit more creative in terms of how we're looking to engage with our parents. So platforms like Twitter has really come to the fore for us in terms of engaging with home. We've used Class Dojo as our main sort of form of communication between home and school, and that's really kind of took off for us in the past year. So it's not necessarily new technologies, they've been around for a while, but it's kind of brought things to the forefront a little bit more. And like Martin was saying, and Katie before, I think these are things that will continue even after COVID, and we, you know, we eventually do get back to normal, if you like, I think those things will continue. And I think parents now, I think we feel at our school that we've kind of moved on since a year ago in terms of our engagement with parents. I think it's better than it's ever been, to be honest. And I think that's another real kind of positive to come from it. You know, I mentioned Twitter Dojo. There's those sort of platforms, the Zoom for, you know, I'll be doing an online safety workshop next week via Zoom to our parents. Those sort of things have sort of taken over from inviting parents in, but I think those are things that they'll stay.
Yeah, it's really nice when those technologies allow people who maybe couldn't take that time off of work to be able to do it from home, like the Zooms. Yeah. Dawn, I'd like to bring you into the conversation here.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think the biggest thing, the positive thing, is that parent engagement and joining up in home and school, because previously kind of teachers might have only come in, parents might have only come in to see their teacher once a term during parents' evening. I had a quick flick through the books and a 5-minute conversation, or if you're a secondary parent, kind of waiting in the hall for that slot. Whereas now the online parents' evening, you don't have to, you can have your slot, you can discuss it, but also you're at home, so you're seeing what's going on. But also parents have had to learn a lot of these new technologies as well, because all of a sudden, not only they're the parent at home, but they're also the teacher at home. So I think there has been a greater understanding between both parents and teachers about the different roles. And from that has come a lot more respect and that growing of the school community, because parents are aware of kind of what the day takes, and they've had to learn all the new systems that are in school. So like David mentioned Dojo, and you know, a parent might have never seen that before, and all of a sudden they're being expected to use it on a day-to-day basis, or they're handing work in using a different platform, say, you know, Pepper Mash, let's say. But a parent has to learn all that. So I think we've got to make sure that parents are informed, and it's as easy as possible for the parents to use as it is for the child, as it is for the teachers. So you do have that seamless work, safety, feedback, and everyone working for the best, which is for the interests of the kids at the end of the day.
Katie, did you want to add? Because I know you do a lot of work with families as well, don't you? I think you're muted, Katie.
It's very, I think, you know, people are still finding their feet. One of the issues, there hasn't been a standard approach. Of course, schools all have, you know, their own individual cultures and visions, and so do, you know, local academy trusts and local authorities. But schools groups are still trying to standardise principles of good practice, and particularly around screen time. And that has really been an important debate, particularly since the new DfE requirements this January, where we saw hours being referred to. You have to, you know, provide 3 hours, you have to provide 4 hours. And, you know, schools finding their feet around whether that was 3 or 4 hours on screen, or and the kind of more holistic delivery of the curriculum for remote learning. That doesn't necessarily mean remote teaching, and it doesn't mean to say, and it doesn't have to be online learning either. So I think people are still developing a remote learning policy and strategy around that, and that's really important. But they're doing it like exactly as Martin said. You know, I've been working in the tech industry or schools for 20 plus years, and we've achieved more in the last 9 months than we have in the entire 20 years. It's incredible, really, and it's just a testimony to the hard work of the schools and the teachers and the children and you know, and parents as well. But it's very difficult for families, because people are working, they've got shared devices. The digital divide, you know, issue rages on. You know, even where in families my own, I had to, you know, use my device today for a remote lesson because couldn't get on the other device that we've got. And so even in a house where I'm a digital lead for a council, you know, I still struggle as well. So there are many elements of the digital strategy that we still need to be seen coordinated at regional level and local authority level, yeah. As you know, as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Katie. And that kind of brings me on to, I want to move us on to our next question. we've got a lot to get through. But I was curious, and maybe Martin, this can come to you, as a senior leadership teams have to ensure that their curriculum is aligned with their remote learning strategy, like we've discussed with policies, safeguarding and inclusion, all the way through to implementation. So what's the best approach for leadership teams doing that?
I think sort of Katie touched on her last question, is that you've got to keep evolving. You know, I think in all aspects of life at the moment, you know, a week seems a long time. And certainly, you know, if I look back to, you know, what we put in place in sort of March, April, May sort of time last year to what we're doing now, I'm sure will be the same with every school in the country, that it's, you know, it's come on leaps and bounds since then. But obviously, as you introduce sort of new technology, new devices, then, you know, policies needs to be constantly updated. As well, there's been, you know, other changes in the last year that, you know, there's a new PSRE framework sort of come out, which has put a much greater emphasis on online safety. There's the Education for a Connected World document, which, you know, really good, but, you know, it's almost like, where do we fit all these things in? So we're constantly sort of tweaking and updating, and it's certainly not any sort of you know, magic wand that we've cast over everything that's in place or anything yet, but it's constant tweaking. And I think it's realizing that online safety does play a part across the whole curriculum, and it can be embedded in all subjects, but in quite a fun way at times. And that's something that I've sort of tried to explore, like in sort of recent years, you know, tying into things like sort of propaganda in, you know, when you're teaching World War II, and sort of, you know, how that was almost like the origins of like fake news and in certain ways. So, you know, there is ways that you can bring sort of online safety into, you know, your curriculum as a whole. But I think sort of when we look at you know, like the core elements of online safety, if you like, I think probably traditionally we're very much focused on content and contact as being sort of what we've covered in online safety, almost like, you know, what do children see, is it age appropriate, and almost like that stranger danger sort of side of contact. But we've got that third C now of conduct, and that's sort of never been greater than at the minute, when children are spending an increased amount of time sort of online, sort of both, you know, in terms of their professional conduct, if you like, sort of within their lessons, but also, you know, the exposure that they've got to communication through gaming sites and social media sites and everything else. And I think sometimes we're a little bit reluctant to touch upon some of those things in education, because it's almost like the equivalent of like the sex education sort of talk if you're an upper key stage 2 teacher that you might want to shy away from. And yet, you know, sort of, you know, issues around things like, you know, sexting and the sharing of nude images and stuff like that are real things that are affecting even, you know, primary age children. And it's important that, you know, we touch on that, you know, relationship aspect of online safety. And actually, you know, in many ways, the biggest online safety concern, or, you know, most consistent problem at least, is basically, for want of a better term, children being beastly to each other online. You know that problem, and that we sometimes don't cover enough. You know, we focus too much on, you know, the contact from other people, what they see, and actually, you know, the focus really needs to be put on the individual, and sort of letting children, you know, sort of know their own sort of responsibilities on there. So yes, you know, it's got to be top down, it's got to filter across the curriculum, it's got to, you know, come in all areas. But there's been a hell of a lot of change in so many aspects, not just the way we're teaching and delivering, but other documents and policies and everything else that's come about. That, you know, I just say, you know, be kind to yourself. It's ongoing, it's constantly developing, but don't, you know, if you wrote your policy for October 2020, I think, which when the legal deadline was, I would have expected numerous updates since then, because certainly, you know, there's barely a week going by that we haven't sort of tweaked and updated. And I think, you know, that's the approach I would say to everyone. Be thinking on your feet all the time. And
David, as your new role as a deputy head, is there anything that you would like to add on that front?
Yeah, just to kind of pick up on what Martin was saying there, really, we've found that it's still developing all the time, our approach to remote learning. You know, we're constantly reviewing it. We've got a review next week with our school improvement partner, and I know that there'll be things that will come out of that we won't have thought of yet. And it's just reflecting on things all the time, because it is changing constantly, you know, daily, really. So I think one of the key things for us has been just to try and sort of keep it simple. I think Dawn kind of touched on that earlier, and that, you know, we've got to think about parents as well, that they're having to deal with all of these changes as well as staff and the children. So to try and keep it simple, I think it's been quite important for us to not have too many platforms, to try and sort of streamline things. And I think in the past year, if we look back to kind of last March to now with our remote learning, I think if anything, we've tried to sort of streamline it all a little bit more and just sort of keep it simple, because it can be a bit overwhelming, I think, because of all the changes and all the guidance that comes out, and that's constantly changing and being updated. So I think keeping it simple and communicating it really clearly to governors, to staff, to parents, I think that's kind of really important as we move forward as well.
Great, thank you.
Tilly, I would just add to what David said there about, you know, it's got to be clear communication, but also training as well, and make sure that's built in, because there's no point in adding to a platform or changing it if the teachers haven't had time. Yes, they can learn on their feet and it is spur of the moment, but as Martin said, so much at the moment is being thrown at teachers and leadership team that you kind of need to give time to embed and let things sit. And I think Martin made a really good point about online safety and conduct. Now, in a normal world like pre-COVID, you would have all those discussions in class. So I think it's really important to carry on having those conversations as much as you can online, and to make time for that, because otherwise the children are either having the conversations if it's a live lesson, or listening to a recorded lesson, or they're having the conversations on their own with their own groups, and you may not know what platform they're doing that on. The parents might not be aware, because they might be saying to the parent, oh yes, we're doing our homework. And especially at the moment with lots of people working in separate rooms, whereas before, you know, the old message of make sure that the device is where you can see them with the child so you know what's online. Well, at the moment, you know, that's really hard, because you might have two parents working at home, plus 2 or 3 children who all need to be on different lives, maybe at the same time, and you can't do that all in the same room. So it's also kind of talking to parents to make sure that they can check, and, you know, just because the child is saying, oh yeah, I've got a life science lesson, when they might either be on the Xbox, or, you know, my son's just discovered Football Manager. So, you know, that's getting high priority at the moment. And I think it's being aware of that, and not kind of thinking, oh yeah, they're getting on with their schoolwork because they're quiet and they're upstairs and they're online and that's fine. So it's making sure you have those discussions all the time, both with the parents and the children. And yes, Safer Internet Day on Tuesday is a really good time to have this, because it's been, you know, it's that day that brings it to the fore, but it should be throughout the curriculum as well. And I think for parents as well, you know, the theme next week is kind of an internet we can trust, reliability of information, and it's providing parents with those skills as well, because, you know, we know how hard it is in the past to get parents to come in if you're doing an online safety demo for Internet Safety Day. You know, everyone's nodding. It's not the easiest, you know, or the most exciting event, but it's the one that parents need, and parents tend to come to you in the information when things go wrong, and it's trying to get in there before things go wrong. So it's kind of making sure that everybody is aware, and that's your staff, your governors, which David said quite rightly, because they need to be involved, parents and the kids, and making sure that everyone's getting the same information all the time, and it's just clear and consistent.
Yeah, I think that's a really good message to send out. And kind of picking up on that, what do you think is the biggest barrier to children applying those critical thinking skills to online content? Because we can teach it in the schools, but how do we know they're doing it and support them? Dawn, do you want to carry on, and then we can hand over to Katie?
I think it's giving them time to discuss it. We would be giving them time in school, and it's teaching them, it's showing them information and saying, well, how it's unpicking the information, so that if there's an image or if there's a news article, well, let's start to have a look at it. You know, just because something is reported on social media, very often things get reported on social media first, and sometimes it's not true because it hasn't been fact checked. So how do you fact check? How do you go back and look? And yes, you know, you've got the old websites that, you know, I used to use when I was teaching, like the Octopus Tree and the Dog Island, where the children can start unpicking clues. And as Martin said, going back to World War II, propaganda, this isn't a new thing, fake news. You know, it wasn't invented with Trump. It's been around for a long time. And it's how you check that reliability. But I think also at this time, it's really important, because as well as the children being online, you know, their grandparents are being online. And I'm not saying that all grandparents aren't technical, but this is a great way to kind of share online safety messages across the family and generations, and make sure that, you know, if they're getting that email from BT that's asking them to apply their password, is it a true email? And how do you kind of help support other people with facts, as well as, you know, not being taken in yourself? And that the fact that if they're seeing all these people on social media channels that are influencing and telling them to buy X, Y, and Z, well, they're all being paid for that. That's their job. They're not doing it because they think it's the best product. And it's slowly unpicking things that are part of their realm and their makeup as well. Sorry, I don't know if I was going to hand over.
No,
sorry, I went
Katie was going to speak
before.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
before Katie wants to-
I didn't know if I needed to say.
You were ready to go.
Just some practical ideas from some of the teachers in Islington. It has become this, you know, online safety is truly the Green Cross code at the moment, and it's around how you keep children and families conscious of those messages, because it's, you know, it quickly becomes a policy that you email to the families at the start of the term, and it's around how you make that interactive part of the school day, part of the motivational routine. Some of the strengths of the remote learning strategies that we've had in our schools have been around, you know, live is not necessarily best. The Education Endowment Foundation have said that. Ofsted have actually said that as well. However, those motivational registrations of we're checking in, have we cleaned our teeth, we're going to be using Oak Academy, we're using BBC, we're using Too Simple, we're doing this, this and this today. And just remember, you know, come on, tell me, Tilly, what did we learn last week about this? So just making it part of the core motivational, having a good day has to be about online safety, and it's embedding it into the teachers' practices is really important. And then also, I think hearing from schools as well is just making them conscious, really getting them to think that at the moment the reality is, you know, technology is not designed for children. It is a lot of technology is designed by gambling experts. It is meant to hook you in for hours and hours, and you do need to be able to self-regulate like you do with chocolate and fizzy drinks and etc. You need to be able to do that yourself, and you know, educating families and children, kind of keeping that conversation going, which is part of the digital literacy curriculum, you know, around the algorithm of your use, and how platforms, social media platforms and gaming platforms are designed, you know, to keep you in there and designed to trick you sometimes, and that other users behave badly. It is about behaviour, and they are going to try and dupe you. They're going to try and, just like they would in the playground, they want to get an extra sweet off you in the playground. They're going to do that in a gaming platform with you. They want to try and trade with you and maybe get away with keeping it without trading fairly. You know, so it's getting them to understand the technology, get kind of key reminders as well. And really, I mean, the good BBC have a great site called Own It, which is designed more for kind of a 10 and 11-year-old. But I really love that title, because that is, you know, that is about that is the motto for me for children and families. Definitely getting more people in, you know, families involved. They have to game with the kids. You know, we're doing a lot of work on that at the moment, but it's a challenge, because I'm, you know, my child's downstairs on a screen because I'm doing this at the moment. You know, so it's a real challenge for working families, or for families who aren't working but, you know, in small spaces, etc. We're all trying to get through this. You know, so, but it is about giving them achievable ideas. And what are the other ways? So one of those things definitely at the moment we're doing in schools is getting involved with your children, gaming. We're working with someone called Kate Russell, who's a BBC technology reporter. We've made some really fun, easy clips with her ferrets that are on YouTube, but she's talking to families. We've got a new one, but we're using ferrets. Well, we're using ferrets because we're also zoomed out. They're actually bringing in, I don't know if you've got blowers or party hats, but we're hearing that, you know, you kind of teach a lesson, and then the children say, you understand it? Are you ready to go? And they go, have you got a cat? And they go, no, we're doing fractions today. So anyway, we've worked with Kate Russell to bring her ferrets in to keep families engaged. And one of the clips is about how to get involved and support your child with gaming, you know, just to kind of support families at the moment. You know, everyone's doing their best. I mean, I'm just amazed. I'm amazed we're getting through this, to be frank.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. I love that, the cats and the ferrets. David, was there anything that you wanted to add as a teacher from you?
Yeah, I just to follow on from that, I think we've just got a really good opportunity at the minute to highlight critical thinking, to really get online safety not just to the forefront, but actually embed it. One thing that we've done in this last lockdown is just a daily morning video. So every teacher posts a little video on Class Dojo for their children and parents of our classes to see. And it's a really good opportunity, not just to kind of, like Katie was saying, do your sort of register and how's everyone doing, and to check in that way, which is really nice and really important, but actually just to get those online safety messages in there, and just to talk every day. Just remember your online behavior today when we're doing this, or when we've got our Zoom later. And I think it's just trying to get it in there as much as possible. And that's how we'll get it embedded, isn't it? It's doing it every day, and not just kind of, it's online safety week next week, so let's think about online safety. I think we've got a really good opportunity now that we're online so much now with remote learning, to just get it embedded in, as it should be, So I think we've got to really make sure we don't sort of pass up that opportunity that we've got at the minute to do that.
Great, thank you. And Martin, I'm going to come to you first for this one. I just wanted to know, what's been the effect on pupil as well as staff wellbeing and mental health over the last year?
I think it's been, a massive impact, and the biggest thing is the lack of sort of face-to-face interaction. I think actually academically, I know, you're seeing stuff in the press and that, kids are X amount a month. I don't think that's the case at all. I think actually schools have done a wonderful job, supported by parents, and the pupils actually taking responsibility themselves. I don't think the educational gap for me is the concern moving forward. It's that lack of social interaction with their peers. It's those opportunities to play for sport and teams and everything that brings. It's, everything that children learn through play and through interaction. That's, for me, the biggest concern, and particularly for our youngest children who, have gone sort of throughout reception in year one, for example, like hardly been at school sort of at times, and those fundamental sort of skills that they'll have, sort of missed out on, and the ability to sort of form relationships and to share and everything else. Tying it into the online side of things a little bit more, I think sort of, I'll include parents in that alongside the pupil and the staff, that we need to recognize that when we post on most platforms, we're normally posting the good bits. And yes, as say educators, we can pick up nice ideas. We can go on to Twitter, Facebook groups, whatever it might be, and we go, oh, that's a nice lesson idea. But we've also not got to get sort of too caught up in sort of thinking that, oh, this is what's happening 24/7 in every other school, and aren't I failing because I'm not doing this, and all these wonderful things that's happening elsewhere. Likewise for parents, a lot of what they'll see of other parents is like how they're juggling sort of, managing sort of remote learning with their own job, with sort of having a beautiful tea on the table and everything else. And really, sort of it's taken that in. But I don't know, I'm not a child, but I would hazard a guess that there's that element of things, like even within like the people WhatsApp groups as well, that you'll get sort of one child posting and they're going, wasn't the maths work easy this morning? And they probably like struggle like hell with it and stuff like that. But then it's creating that sort of, tension for other people, and that, I would imagine that that's something that kids probably don't find easy in that social context of being supportive of their peers. They're more likely to sort of, try and have a little bit bravado and everything else. So whether you're a pupil, a parent, whatever, sort of, pick up the little good bits of sort of, others online, but, realize that it's not giving a true snapshot of reality, what you're seeing online. And, those face-to-face relationships that you can still have in any context, probably with our immediate families, is all we've got at the minute, is the important bit, and not get too bogged down into 24/7 online life, because it's only a little sort of snapshot. It's not given a sort of true reflection of actually what's happening in other schools and other homes.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. And Dawn, this is something that I think Too Simple has been quite big on recently as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's I think it's got, I agree with Martin that it isn't the whole picture, but also I think online has enabled other kids to thrive. Those children in school that quite frankly didn't like being in school and were like the really quiet ones, have now almost come into their own. And that's not, you know, a blanket statement, because obviously you can't, you know, I can't sit here and make those, but I've kind of seen it with my own child who's kind of GCSE year. He'll be in a live lesson, but also on his phone, there'll be a group of the children chatting like they would in school, and they're kind of finding ways to replicate it as well. And it kind of, yes, they're missing out on the sport and the other connections, but they're also connecting in other ways that we might not have appreciated. And I think that is hugely important. And also, you know, they can't see the grandparents, but they're probably FaceTiming them more than they ever were, and that will continue. Or they're reading stories to them if they're younger. And it's all about, you know, making sure that, as Martin said, though, that, you know, what you're reflecting out is kind of the whole picture. We don't want to, you know, of course you just want to put the good bits on, but it's okay to say we're not having a good day. And with the whole screen time as well, I think more and more schools, particularly now in lockdown 3, which I think everyone has found harder. I mean, you know, who thought back in March that there would even be a 2, never mind a 3. And, you know, today's Groundhog Day, which I think is just really ironic that we've kind of been living Groundhog Day for the last couple of months. You know, what do I do today? I'll get up, I've got a live lesson, or the next one's recorded and I've got to have this in. But they're doing kind of Tech Free Friday or Wellbeing Wednesdays. And that's not just for the children, but it's also for the parents and the staff, because also that realization that if the teachers are online, it is more because they're planning for the online work. They might also be in school teaching the vulnerable and the kids of key workers. Then they're also doing the marking of the evening and the extra bit that all comes with it, that those conversations that you might have had at the gate are either happening via emails or via follow-up Zoom calls all the time. And, you know, we all know how exhausting it can be sitting like this for 12 hours every day. You know, back in March, you might have laughed and gone, oh, what's so hard about sitting in a chair looking at a screen? Oh, Lord, it is quite monotonous. And, you know, for your own well-being and health, I think it's important to, you know, go and take your daily exercise, get out, have a chat about something else. So the whole Wellbeing Wednesdays that's coming in, you know, it's Children's Mental Health Week this week. Parents talking to children about, yes, their online life, but also their outside life, and how you look after you, I think is vitally important.
Thank you. David, did you want to add something then?
Yeah, just the things like the Wellbeing Wednesday, you know, we've started that as well. I know it seems to be taking off. I'm really looking forward to it tomorrow as a teacher, you know, and I think Dawn said sometimes for staff as well, just having that bit of break, you know, that bit of switch off from being on screen is really important. I think just to pick up on a couple of things, I think as a teacher, it has been overwhelming at times, actually, the workload. The sort of being in my school, we're all in school all the time just because of our numbers. We've got quite a small staff, but a lot of children who are needed to be in with key worker status and vulnerable children. So we've got the sort of daily teaching, but also delivering, preparing the remote learning, keeping up with the feedback with that, you know, responding to messages, and it can feel at times a little bit overwhelming. And I think that's where it's really important as a profession to just keep talking. I know Martin's a big sort of advocate of that, and I'm sure I won't be embarrassing him here, but in that first week, actually, after Christmas, we were having a few texts back and forth, and I found that week really difficult. You know, there was the whole like, are we in, are we not? There was that ridiculous Monday where it was safe to be in, and then by the Tuesday it wasn't safe, and then we had to quickly switch to remote learning. And I think just having a few chats with Martin actually over that week really helped me, and I think it made me think, you know, as a deputy head now, it's a senior leadership role, I think, to listen actually, and a bit to realize that sometimes staff, we just need to kind of unload and talk about stuff, and not feel like, you know, we'll have to cope all the time with everything, you know, just to have that bit of chance to kind of talk things through, and just to be mindful of the workload and the potential to feel a little bit overwhelmed with teaching, remote learning, balancing all of that, plus balancing your own family life and your own maybe worries about family members and COVID and all the rest of it. It can feel a lot at the minute. So I think we've got to keep talking, got to keep supporting each other as a profession, but also to be there for parents and the children as well. You know, I think it's really important just to keep talking about things.
Definitely, I think that's very important. And Martin and David, this one is kind of in particular for you two. What would you say have been the key online safety considerations when you've been designing remote learning, and what's been your key to the success of it? Martin.
God, I'll chip in first. Yeah, it's, you know, I touched on before that there's an element of thinking on our feet. I think for me, I think something that schools need to be aware of is, whilst we're making good use of lots of platforms, often some of the important features that actually enable things to be as safe as possible come with premium subscriptions sometimes. And I think schools do have to sort of, you know, think carefully about balancing that out, that, you know, whilst there are platforms there that will be of great benefit to you, you know, we haven't just got to use them for the sake of it if it brings about, you know, some sort of risk to it as well. I don't want to sort of, you know, go blowing things out the water, but you know, we use Zoom, and you know, sort of trialed it a little bit sort of in the summer term last year, but realised that there was, you know, implications, for example, around sort of recording the sessions. That was something that sort of, you know, obviously from a safeguarding point of view, you know, in our policies, we've talked about that we'll keep those sessions for 12 months as a minimum, wanting the second person online there. But you know, if you're recording all that content, it's very quickly sort of filling up sort of your hard drive on your computer and stuff like that. So you know, to get like the premium service where you're recording it in the cloud, you're talking £1,400 sort of year subscription to. But it was things like that that we had to have careful conversations around, thinking, you know, do we want these sort of features there? You know, the features around sort of, you know, co-hosts and stuff like that sort of come with these tools. The same goes for, you know, sites like Loom that people are making good use of as well, and that. So you know, just, yes, we've got to act quickly, but don't just sort of jump into things, you know, sort of, you know, do a little bit of research, speak to other people who are using it, and I say we up sort of what's sort of in your best interest. And you know, yes, some of these things might seem a little bit expensive, but actually in the context of, you know, what we've probably still got to face over, you know, the coming months and maybe years sort of, you know, ahead yet, because there's still like to be some element of children in self-isolation and stuff like that for a long time to come, that actually, you know, it might be worth investing in premium versions of, you know, sort of software that we want to use. So that certainly would be the key considerations. Maybe I'll let David sort of answer with regards to successes of remote learning, because I know certainly he's had many at his school.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Yeah, I think first of all, it's like Martin's saying, there's no kind of winning formula really for remote learning, is it? I think it's just whatever works best for your school and your context. And yeah, you know, there's lots out there, lots of different platforms, and you've like Martin's saying, we've got to make sure we research them and we look into them. You know, we looked at a few different platforms, but ultimately you've got to go for one that works best for your school community. And I think, like I said before, just keeping it simple as well, not overcomplicating things. Trying to keep it, I think, a limited number of platforms that you're using maybe. So we've sort of mainly gone with sort of our website for children to access the remote learning. And then we use Class Dojo for communication, but also for children to upload their work to a portfolio on there. We can then access that work, ping it back with comments. And we do use Zoom as well, and dip into that for kind of catch-ups and sort of on live lessons, if you like. So we've tried to just kind of streamline it, keep it simple. I think some of the successes really are with the communication. Actually, I mentioned that before. I think that's something that's been a real positive, is that homeschool communication's really sort of strengthened throughout the past year. In terms of the sort of online safety aspects of things, making sure, I think Dawn mentioned it before, making sure that we're CPD, that we're up to date, we're training staff, because if we're expecting them to use these platforms straight away, you know, we can't do that. We've got to give them the adequate training first, and just sort of making sure that the whole school community is up to date as much as possible with online safety, and doing that by getting those messages out there by whatever platforms you're using, but just making sure that parents are on board with key messages, that children are on board, staff, governors, and just trying to sort of all work together as one school community, really, with a focused approach to remote learning.
Yeah, we've had some of our schools, just kind of building on that, David, those brilliant points about parental engagement. We've had some of our schools working with the PCTA, and the PCTA running the WhatsApp school groups. The teachers are often, exactly as David said, using the Class Dojo. They're using Google Classroom, but then for communication using Dojo or sometimes Seesaw. But then actually using the PCTA to reach out even further, because and keeping those class WhatsApp groups, the etiquette strong. And so we've done some training with the PCTA in schools about knowing how to intervene, how to close down negative comments, and how to, get support to those parents. I just wanted to mention the word fun, because I think particularly since January with the DfE new legal requirement, David has mentioned, kind of referred to the kind of the pressure, and Martin, that teachers have felt. And I think just as leadership teams, we're seeing a lot of our schools, the SLT really getting stuck in, leading, very visually leading, running daily assemblies, bringing the school together, making your remote learning, kind of part of your culture. So it is about your school. Online safety underpins that, which is really, really important. But it's also achievable. And I think we saw this out, kind of 3 or 4 hours of delivery, and now, exactly as everyone said, we're backtracking. It's constantly evolving, which is really, really, really positive. It has been a bit of a perfect storm. I don't know if you've seen the videos that have been kicking around YouTube and Facebook around the parents trying to do, the maths, primary, chunking method, or, division. And many parents weren't taught the way we're teaching now. Secondary are more independent, but at primary school, there was a good article from The Guardian just highlighting the stress that families are feeling, because many primary school children are not independent. And so they're having to try and keep their children up to speed with new concepts. So it's about how, choosing the concepts you are going to deliver that are brand new, choosing those carefully and getting the support to families where, you think they might not actually understand the concepts because they've not been taught them themselves. And just that word fun, really, letting children choose. Another top tip is about having a menu in the afternoon, so children they feel an ownership. They don't have to hand it in. It doesn't have to be done. That there's a menu every day that they can choose with their family, and they can choose something that's achievable for them, which is, I thought that's really, really helpful.
Yeah, I think that fun, control and ownership is really important for me and definitely for children as well, making it fun. Yeah. Just a reminder to everybody, if you do have any questions, please do put them in the Q&A, because I'm going to ask the guys one final question and then go to the audience questions. And because, I know we've talked about online safety is not just for Safer Internet Day, it is for the longevity and embedded across everything we do. But it is being celebrated next Tuesday. So I wanted to ask all of you if you could recommend one resource to support the theme, which is exploring reliability in the online world, including fake news, what would it be? Dawn, let's go to you first.
Well, it wouldn't be right if I didn't actually say a Too Simple resource. So I'm actually going to mention 2 things from Too Simple. One is a free guide for parents, all about exploring reliability in the online world. And we partnered with UK Safer Internet Centre, who kind of run Safer Internet Day, and Amazon Web Services, to produce the guide specifically for parents on how they can have conversations with their children about what is reliable information online, and also about the positive nature of the internet, as well, about how it can be used for education, for fun, how children can look at future careers, conversation starters. All of that is in the guide, and that's free to download, and I'll put the link in the chat. And the other one is for those watching, we'd love you to join us in our attempt to break a Guinness World Record title. So we've partnered with Safer Internet Centre. So from next Tuesday, starting at 10 o'clock, we're trying to break the Guinness World Record for the most pledges received for an internet safety campaign in 24 hours. It's open. You don't have to be a Too Simple subscriber or a Purple Mouse subscriber. There'll be a link on it just to go to, fill it out, and you're pledging for an internet we can trust, which is the theme of next Tuesday. And it's what you would do to make an internet we trust, an internet better place. So yeah, so fingers crossed that we can all come together. And during lockdown, apparently there were lots of world records, Guinness World Records smashed last year, so like really random ones as well. So hopefully we'll be able to kind of start and end the day by breaking a world record, fingers crossed. And then I'm going to mention one more because I used to work for them as well. LGFL have a great DigiSafe collection of resources for fake news. It's all open access. You don't have to be an LGFL school. It's a great kind of collection of both policies, agreements, activities, like kind of a one-stop shop. So there we go. I'll put the links in the chat. Thanks.
Thank you, Dawn. You broke the choose one, but I'll let it go. And what a lovely competition for everybody to take part in. So please do that. Martin.
Yeah, for me, I think you've got to make children aware how easy it is to manipulate sort of particularly images to create that idea of fake news. I think, you know, if children actually see and they create it themselves, then they begin to be, you know, to quote the national curriculum, be discerning and evaluating digital content. They'll stop and question things. So I think sometimes teachers think that's really complicated and difficult to do. It's not. There's a number of tools you can use for like app smashing activities where you're going to cut part of one image and put it on another. So you can use like simply like things like the snipping tool and pick collage, for example, you could use to cut out part of one image and add it onto another. There's a good app called Magic Eraser does that sort of thing as well. And then if those images you've created, another grade 3 app called UNewsEd, you can create your own sort of what look like sort of, you know, in few like BBC News type sort of stories and that. So, you know, I mentioned early on about linking that to World War II. I've done like, you know, aliens. There's loads of different things across the curriculum that you can use in that way where, you know, children actually, I think when they see how easy it is to do it, it really makes them then stop and question sort of what they're seeing online. So, you know, give children the opportunity themselves to manipulate and create fake news, and that'll help them to stop and question what they see online.
Yeah, it's so important that they can be the creators and see that they can do it too. And also, like you said, across the curriculum, embedding it. So that's really smart. Katie.
I've put in the chat a link to the ISIT blog. We've got Common Sense Education, which is the one of the first ever online safety resources. I think started in 2003. Highly regarded. They're launching in the UK. They're very strong on digital hygiene. How much, how Penny's asked in the chat, how are we going to get children off the amount of screens? So Common Sense Media is being launched. I think Scotland and Wales are adopting it for all of their schools. We've embedded all of the Safer Internet Centre resources into their spring term, and it might be helpful as well. Our lead teachers have taken all the Safer Internet Day resources and put them into easy to kind of embed into Seesaw, Class Dojo, a Google Classroom. So they've taken they've done it by year groups so that teachers can really easily paste into their remote platforms, so the Safer Internet Day resources. So that's in the link there. So Common Sense Media, and then also practically just all of the text from Safer Internet Centre that can be put into the remote platforms. Newswise is embedded in there. So Newswise from The Guardian is free. They run workshops, and obviously Newswise is all around critical thinking in the news. That's another strong one. Thanks a lot.
Right, thank you, Katie. And David, what's yours?
Yeah, I'm gonna pinch you one from Martin here that he showed me a couple of years back when we were working together, because sometimes I think unplugged activities kind of sometimes be better than the on-screen activities. And there's a really good one to use, particularly with Upper Key Stage 2. I'll be using it next week with my Year 5s. It's called the Tree Octopus. It's brilliant. It's a website. It's so genuine. It's about this tree octopus that lives on the west coast of America, and it's such a genuine looking website with links to sort of real sort of wildlife websites, and there's sightings and video clips that are being doctored. But it's amazing. In a class of maybe 30 year sixes, they all get duped. There's always one at the end who says, "Oh, I knew it was fake," but because of the way the website's designed, it's so easy to be duped by it. And then obviously you can sort of reveal it at the end. They can either, you know, access it online. I'll put the link in the chat, or you could print it out and do it more as a reading comprehension, which is how I've done it before, and just said, I'm just doing some reading comprehension. There you go. And then they'll go through it, they'll read it, they'll answer the questions. And then obviously at the end you say, you know, it's fake, it's not real. But then that can lead to some really good discussions about reliability and how you can check, and how sort of easy it is to be duped online. So that's a really good one. And just really quick, I still really like there's the Google Internet Legends resource, free download, that they've got some really nice stuff on reliability. There's some nice games. There's one called Reality River, which again I'll be using next week with my year 5s, and it sort of gives them different scenarios, you know, about online messages and scams and ads and emails, and it just kind of really gets them to develop those critical thinking skills as well. So that's always a good one to dip into as well, I think.
Thank you. And for everybody out there, don't worry, we are going to collate all of these wonderful tips into a doc and email it out to you at the end. So we've just about got time for 2 questions. So I'm going to take this one first. It's anonymous. And what's the most impressive, inspiring or creative piece of work you've marked or seen since the lockdown last March? Who wants to take that one?
It's actually something that Martin did at Lanchester, and it was, you know, the rainbows in the first lockdown, and they actually kind of asked, and Martin will probably correct me because I'm looking at it all wrong, but they all took pictures of the colour, and then they made a wonderful rainbow design and got in touch with their partners. But it was a real community, and I've seen lots of that kind of shared. And, you know, obviously we've had the sad news today about Captain Tom Moore passing away, and just the cards and the inspiration that he left for the children at that time and encouraging them. I just think is that the rainbow for me, the hope, the walking, those messages for the children in these uncertain times, for me, will stay as the most impressive. And I think for the children as well, like Marcus Rashford, who is like kind of one of their heroes as well. So it's kind of those heroes coming through into their work, and you can see them being inspired then to want to do more. And, you know, that Captain Moore's mantra of tomorrow is a good day, or tomorrow will be a good day, is one that I think we can all kind of aspire to.
Thank you for that. Well, we've got 2 minutes left. Does anyone have one more thing that they wanted to add? Martin and David, you both had your hand up. Go on, David.
Yeah, so yeah, just about kind of inspirational things. It's a group of my year 5 boys actually, and just, I think, you know, it just shows one of the great things about technology, the creativity that can come about through it, and the collaboration as well. So that one of the tasks I'd asked them to do as part of our topic, we're learning about space, the International Space Station. I sent home a kind of grid, a bit like was mentioned before, actually, with sort of like Katie mentioned it, a kind of grid of suggested activities that you could dip into, and they chose to make a model of the ISS in Minecraft. It was amazing, and the communication as well between them, obviously they'd all done it in their own bedrooms but online at the same time in their own sort of Minecraft world, in the detail that went into it. And then when they posted it to Dojo, they all sort of narrated over the top of it, and some of the technical vocabulary that was coming through, it was just brilliant to see. And that sort of really inspired me really to think, do you know what, these kids that we're teaching, they're brilliant, and the stuff that they're doing online is fantastic, and we should really be positive about it. I know there's a lot, we've talked about online safety and how important that is. Actually, there's some great stuff happening, and it's actually the kids that are sometimes leading the way with it, and I think we've sometimes got a lot to learn from them as well, actually.
I think what was lovely as well, like following on from that, I've seen your children sort of do that work, but you then share that on Twitter. And if I remember rightly, in terms of I talked about your pride in children's work, I think Issa, who's in the European Space Agency, they actually commented on the children's work as well. Yeah. So, you know, you've got that interaction on all levels, from like the children themselves collaborating on the work to the teacher sharing it sort of to a wider audience through social media, to them actually, you know, coming out of this difficult period actually with that positivity of, hang on, like, you know, the European Space Agency's actually commented on my work. You know, it's not all been doom and gloom over the last 10 months. I think, you know, that's maybe a nice positive point on which to end, like, sort of, in the
it's brilliant.
social media and technology.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. So that's it. We have wrapped up, and from me and all the team and Tegan, who's been working hard on tech, I just want to say a huge thank you to our guests and to everybody who's joined the webinar as well. As I mentioned, we will share the recording and a little handy doc with any key takeaways and links, so you're not going to miss out on anything. But enjoy the rest of your evening, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Bye now.
Everyone, thanks a lot.